Former undercover cops of Reddit, what is the craziest thing you had to do to not blow your cover? I worked as a transcriptionist for a while, and I transcribed some tape taken off of body mics of undercover officers working a very notorious domestic terrorism case. It was crazy. They would sound like an absolute backwoods hill people lunatic while talking to their marks, then later when talking to the other police officers, would sound all business and like a very professional person. My cousin was an undercover ATF agent. Anyway, they were trying to bust some guys for illegal alcohol distribution and were building a rapport by going undercover. My cousin doesn't take his ATF badge with him when he's undercover because if anyone ever saw it, he could get shot. Anyway, some hot-headed black and white cops came over and started harassing them. My cousin couldn't blow his cover, but pretty soon the police started getting physical and they beat crap out of my cousin and the guys he is trying to get evidence from. They take them all into the police station only to find out that my cousin is ATF. My cousin was pissed because cops aren't supposed to beat people up. He is currently filing a lawsuit against the police department. Good on your cousin for filing a lawsuit and actually trying to get some justice in those cops. And he deserves a promotion for managing to keep his cover through all that. My friend who was an undercover cop said that multiple times he had to let himself be arrested to not blow his cover. Like when a sting was going down or whatever, instead of being like, hey, I'm a cop, he would get arrested along with everyone else. Former jailer for a large metro department here. We'd be notified that somebody was coming in from a raid, but other than that they were treated just the same as any other arrest. We'd keep an eye on them in camera to ensure safety. We were usually told ahead of time so nobody went, hey Smith, how'd you get arrested, man? Shit, your sergeant is gonna be pissed. Etc. etc. Edit. By ensuring safety I mean watching for potential fights. We do the same for any number of scenarios and people. Our goal was to spot and stop fights before they became physical. Edit 2. We were a temporary detention facility. Most would be in custody for 24 to 48 hours to see a judge in the morning or get moved to county. So most only maybe a day. Lol, we failed to get that notification once. UC was from a completely different county and he was fully committed to the roll down to fighting us and eventually getting tased. He was cool about it once it was over and we found out, just wanted to really sell it I guess. Reminds me of the episode of American Dad when Stan can't act so he blows his cover. Water? Lamau. You're offering me water, but somehow I don't believe you're really offering me water. My friend used to be a state trooper. She told me about how she used to have to go undercover as a hooker to try to catch Johns. She didn't do so well, though. She was far too polite, so they all knew something was up. As a former correctional officer, we had a situation where a major police department planted a cop in the prison to get information on a guy they believed was orchestrating hits from inside the prison. The warden knew and I knew, by accident, but not a single other co knew, nor did any of the staff, including medical, and that's the way they wanted it. He went through receiving, he was categorized and placed. It was wild. He was there for a week, got the info they needed and got him out. It didn't become public knowledge that he was undercover until after I had left, and it was a long while after as they were making a case. That was a surreal moment. My father worked for NCIS. He told me about an incident where his guys set up a sting to bust some drug suppliers who turned out to be local police setting up their own sting. They figured it out when they tried to bust each other. Edit. Grammar. This is the Spider-Man meme but in real life. I know a guy who often went undercover as a junkie. He was committed. He'd stop showering for a while before a gig and piss on his tracksuit before going into work. He was so good that he managed to get the same dealer convicted twice in the space of a year and they never suspected he was the rat. He had multiple police records under different names too. 1. Piss on your tracksuit. 2. Go to local police station. 3. Become an undercover cop. Profit. Nice try, drug lord. I imagine there are numerous drug lords and cartel leaders anxiously waiting for responses to this question. Just waiting. One time a Homeland Security officer came up to my house undercover, flashed his badge and asked if he could come in. Once he was in, he pulled out a piece of paper with my neighbor's face on it. He asked if I had seen him around lately. When I asked what he did, and let him know I haven't seen him around, he told me what he was wanted for. Rape, child abuse, drugs, the whole lot. Turns out he raped his stepdaughter, and once he found out he was wanted he went back to El Salvador. I thought they only flashed their badges in the movies, but turns out, the shit's real. My neighbor was pretty heavily into heroin, and once when my friend and I were the sycamore tree in our front yard, we saw two guys dressed in suits walk up the street towards his house. One bent down to pet our cat, and we saw the pistol on his hip. He looked up at us and motioned us to be quiet. The first one went to the front door, and the other went around the back. Another time the whole SWAT team went through our backyard to get into their place. Eventually the guy overdosed, and that was the end of that. Even while on duty, pet cat. Bending down to tie a shoe or pet a cat is a great way to get additional situational awareness. Looking around over your shoulder while walking looks sketchy. But looking around while you pet a cat is natural, and that's when he saw the kids in the tree. He was scanning for threats before the bust. Two guys wearing suits walking up to a drug addict's house would be kind of striking anyways, right? Not a former undercover cop, but I have a second-hand story about an undercover cop. So, this guy appears out of nowhere and befriends a relative of mine who was involved in illegal stuff. Dude was very friendly and just down to party. Had money. Paid for, product. Everything. Would drop in on parties and even allegedly hooked up with hoes. Then he placed an order much larger than before. Few weeks later, relative of mine is arrested and is currently in prison. Craziest thing an undercover cop had to do to keep their cover? Buy drugs and duck bitches. I remember a few years ago in Seattle people were complaining because the cops took months to do an undercover investigation at a strip club to determine if the women were prostitutes. Apparently, this investigation entailed going to strip clubs a lot, drinking beer and trying to get strippers to do things for money other than dance. They proudly announced several of the women were prostitutes and the club was shut down. Meanwhile, violent crime was increasing and 3rd and Pine was an open-air drug market. They also did stings at bikini barista stands by driving up to the window with a $20 sticking out of their fly. Edit, I remember beer was somehow involved because the cops were technically drinking on the job, but apparently Seattle doesn't allow alcohol in strip clubs. I found an article about the club being busted. The dancers were cited for 18 counts of illegal touching during lap dances, 16 counts of offstage nudity, which is prohibited, 18 counts of accepting money for illegal acts, and 4 counts of prostitution. All are misdemeanors. The manager was cited for reckless managerial conduct, a misdemeanor, for allegedly being aware of illegal activity and taking no action. Well, since no one is saying anything, I'll just throw out a slightly on-topic conversation change. There's a show on Netflix called Deep Undercover. They are all 25 to 30-minute episodes about a real-life undercover operation. There's like 50 episodes and some of them are completely insane. I think the craziest one was about the New Orleans Police Department. I highly recommend it. Edit, since so many PPL are wanting to watch this show, don't get your hopes up for binge-watching purposes. They all have the same format, so after 7 to 8 episodes it starts to get really repetitive. I usually watch a couple before I get bored, but the first night I watched a shit ton. So I don't want y'all going in with really high expectations and being disappointed lol. I'll have to check this out. This is the first I've heard of it. NOLA.com, that's the true story about the episode I'm talking about. That was a hell of a read. It's insane to imagine how the criminal activity was almost entirely conducted by the FBI and the corrupt cops in this situation. The local cops were extorting drug dealers for protection. If the dealers didn't pay, the cops would beat them up and rob them. A lady witnessed her nephew getting beat up and robbed by a police officer, and when she reported it, he ducking executed her. What the duck? Louisiana has a rampant corruption problem, and it's exceptionally bad in New Orleans. I met a guy who used to deal in the city several years ago, and in his experience he said the cops were more brutal and violent than a lot of the gangs they loved shooting at. More than one news story involving gang cop violence was flipped around saying the gang members shot first, when in reality it was the cops who basically did a drive-by. I live in Baton Rouge. Last month alone we had 2 cops from different agencies fired for lying about the big bad drug dealer shooting first. Not a cop but a guy my mom dated for a long time was. Older guy, in his 70s now, he was fresh out of the academy and at the Asbury Park riots. Sad scary shit. And then was an undercover narcotics cop for 14 years during the 70s and 80s with the NJSP. He was Puerto Rican, and spoke Spanish, was an ex-Marine, and became a state trooper. They utilized his ability to blend in with organized crime in the Latin community. He had to do coke in front of a bunch of dudes during a buy one night, and basically stuck his knife in and blew a mound up his nose. Then he started having a minor paranoia panic attack that they were going to find out he was a cop. Thanks to the gram of blow he just took to the dome, he was breathing heavy and went out for air. His heart was pounding out of his chest, panicking over how to get out of it. One of the gangsters came outside to talk to him. Hess ready to run or fight. Guy goes, "Man, I've never seen someone snort that much at once, man. You okay?" He sighs a huge sigh of relief, and was like, "Yeah, I never did that much. I'm having trouble breathing, hey. The guy was really nice, brings him a drink and they smoked a cig. Everyone is joking that he has the heart of a lion to take that much. He actually felt bad about locking that one guy up when it all went down. Think he said he tried to help him or get a reduced sentence or something." There are other stories. You know what that means? Oh yeah. Give the people what they need.